Mike and Tom are registered with Stewart Partners Global Advisory LLC.
Common Sense Finance with Mike Wiginton and Tom Farrell of HL Wiginton Capital Management, an independent investment and financial planning firm in downtown Jasper. Mike is a chartered financial analyst charter holder, and Tom is a certified financial planner professional. They are here to discuss and give their thoughts on current financial and economic matters. Now, with Common Sense Finance, here are Mike and Tom. Welcome back to another episode of Common Sense Finance. I'm Tom Farrell. This is Mike Wiginton. You know, I guess it's been a few weeks now, Mike, maybe a little bit longer. We put out a podcast on ESG and finance, and that's environmental, social, and governance. And we've gotten some feedback from a handful of people, and I know you wanted to address some of the feedback.
I want to respond to it. And, you know, we always ask for responses, and the more critical, the better. I mean, I want questions, but you know, we had some pushback on that because it was obvious to a lot of people that my take on this environmental, social, and governance investment theme, that if you're not aware of it, then I mean, you ought to be, because it's going to affect, in my opinion, it's going to affect everyone who has investments if they're successful in their efforts. And so my overall take on it was negative, and I've received some pushback, and I want to respond to that. So this is just a response to the whole ESG movement that we've received. And so I will tell you, with permission, I'm going to name first names. I'm going to call first names only, and we'll do it like that. And these are all good relationships. I'll just tell everybody up front, and so I appreciate the folks, these folks that have responded and were good-natured about saying, yeah, we'll use my first name. So Jay tells me that he thinks that I'm missing it with this whole ESG movement, and that for the most part, he believes that the world is going electric, that's the way it's going to go. And so my response to that is, no, Jay, I am getting it. I don't think you're hearing me, okay? And your response tells me that you're not hearing me, because I've said, how many times have we talked about technology? We've talked the last iPhone, with written blogs plus podcasts. I'm all for technology solving the world's problems and making our lives better, increasing standards of living. And I've said 1,000 times that I believe eventually that technology will solve what really is a battery storage solution for electricity, and that more or less an electric world will become feasible. And when I say feasible, it can stand on its own. As of now, it's just subsidized because it has problems, and it can't make money, or otherwise people would when we're talking about, you know, an all solar home or electric cars, right, that sort of thing. Okay, so it's not that I'm against technological innovation. I'm not at all. What I'm against is a group of folks that want to tell you or anybody else that we're going to try to force you to live like we think you ought to live, and you're going to bear those costs with technology that needs to be subsidized by the taxpayers, among other things. But look, that's just, when you're talking about the electric world, Jay, that comes under the E part, which is environmental, okay? And really you're talking about climate change is where they go with that.
Right.
And I would say to everybody, Matt's going to roll the internet address for the Paris Agreement. We have it. He's going to roll it across the screen now. So you can go, you need to look at this, you need to look it up, and you need to read it and see what the goals of the Paris Agreement are. Read it for yourself. So if you want to sign on to the climate change part of the E, then you're signing on, you believe that you want to sign on to that agreement. And all the companies that you invest in, you want them to come under the burden of that agreement, okay? But that's just one. That's just the E. Let's move on to the S, because Jay didn't address the S. S is for social. If you want to talk about the social part of ESG, Matt, roll over the UN, United Nations Global Compact. We're going to roll the internet address for that so you can see the goals of the UN Compact. Because with the social, we're talking about human rights abuses. And so they're making you sign up, hey, we want to know right off the bat, if you guys are in line with us for the ESG, and if you're socially conscious, you're going to invest this way, according to them. And so you need to sign up for the Paris Agreement, and you need to sign up for the UN Global Compact. So tell me what you're doing about human rights abuses.
So you're saying these groups are going to basically force a lot of these companies, or either people want the big money managers want to invest in those companies.
That's where that's
even if you make tires in Michigan, you're going to have to agree to the terms of these compacts.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Or they're going to, in some way, shape, or form, protest against you, and that may mean that BlackRock may not put your stock into their fund.
Right.
Okay. For example.
Right.
So, you know, to the point you're making, if I'm sitting out here and I'm making widgets, whatever widgets are, in whatever state, I'm like, what are you talking to me about human rights abuses? I mean, that's not what we do. That's not how we provide jobs for people. That's not our. And are you implying that I'm abusing people? What are you saying? The G in ESG is for governance. All right. So when you want to talk about governance, it's the same internet address for the UN Global Compact, and you'll see it's about gender equality in the labor force and in the boardroom. So they're going to dictate to you how your committees and your boards should be made up, or else it's just not in balance, okay? And so they want to dictate that. This is all strikingly familiar to the old affirmative action programs back in the day that were just a wreck, okay? We can look back on hindsight with that, and we know that. So I want to offer to you as a current example the company that is Core Civic. CXW is the ticker symbol. Matt's going to roll the Core Civic information across the bottom of the screen, okay? Core Civic is a company that operates private prisons. They also operate the detention centers that were in the news that house that ICE uses, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The detention centers they use for the illegal immigrant issue we have down on our southern border. Okay, so these groups are protesting and lobbying banks to not lend or in any way, shape, or form do business with companies like Core Civic, totally legit companies. Now, at the end of our podcast, we're going to scroll an excerpt from their most recent, June 30th of this year, their most recent 10Q, which is a quarterly financial statement, financial report that publicly traded companies are required by law to file with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So we're going to roll an excerpt across the screen out of their 10Q, okay? And so they're after companies like that and saying, hey, we're going to shut you down because we're going to lobby these banks to quit providing capital to you, okay? Which that seems illegal to me.
So this company's in a legal business. They're a profitable company and otherwise would have good credit. And now the banks are saying, we're not going to extend you a line of credit. We're not going to offer you any form of financing.
Well, or we already have lines of credit with you. We've been banking you for a while. You're in good standing, a great customer. But when it's up, we're not going to renew it because of this pushback. Right. Again, it's in writing. We're going to provide that for you. I'll tell you one other thing. You brought this up, actually. I remember back a number of years ago when Nike came under, because a lot of people say, how does this apply to me? Okay, well, this could be, imagine you owned a position or positions, either outright, you own Nike stock, or they were positions that were in your pension fund or your 401k plan. And a number of years ago, Nike's stock price really declined over a lot of heat they were taking about their doing business in China and some of the factories where their shoes were being made. They were lamenting that if the number, allow me some room for error here, but it won't be significant, that they were paying them like $1.25 an hour, okay, and how that was just horrible, sweatshop type conditions. You can't pay people that. But nobody ever brought up the fact that before Nike got there, these folks were making somewhere between the equivalent of 15 and 25 cents US dollars an hour. So that it was multiples of what they were making before, but nobody ever mentioned that. So these groups, they don't really have a handle on the issues, yet, you know, they're getting over into your business, and I always wonder, hey man, why don't you go and start a business? Why don't you mind your own business? Why don't you start a business or buy the majority shares in a company, and then you can control, you know, how they address, in your mind, human rights abuses or gender equality. But to try to rub that off on other people, yeah, I'm totally against. That's way outside the lines of good finance. And I believe, and this is the bottom line for me, and yes, Roy, I do come across these things in my research, and they're not necessarily positive, but I'm doing this when I'm looking for positive places for clients to place capital. But we talk about the negative and the positive, okay, but we bring in things that we think that you may not be aware of, but we think you ought to be. And you know, I know they're not popular, but hey, I've never really been a popular guy, and I've spent a career honing that skill, and I want all my credit, if that's okay.
Pretty
okay?
sure.
But I believe it's a radical movement that will, in my mind, based on my entire career and my finance and accounting background, it's clear to me that it's going to result in lower efficiency, higher expenses, lower profits, and that's not good for shareholders. And that's my last word.
All right, thanks for joining us for another Common Sense Finance. We'll see you next time.
Just can't believe all the things people say. Controversy, am I black or white? Am I straight or gay? Controversy. Do I believe God? Do I believe me? Controversy. 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 I can't understand.